G'day guys, welcome to the Forged by the Fire podcast. I've just had a great conversation with my mates Joel, Geordie and Matt. We've gone over all sorts of bits and pieces from what mental health looks like in a bit of the ambulance world. We've talked about isolation and some common mental health struggles for frontline service workers, men, all sorts of fitting into the mould, the tall poppy syndrome, and we've heard some amazing stories. Gone quite deep. Maybe not as many laughs as we might have been hoping for, but man, some great quality. I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot. What else have we talked about, guys? What have I missed? Oh, that's us. It's been great. I really enjoyed it. If there are any topics or things you'd like to hear about, this is your podcast. Feel free to share your story if you want it told out here, or share your story if you want to keep it private as well, and any questions that you want to hear answers to from the panel of frontline services, just giving our take. So feel free to join the conversation, crank up your own barbecue and talk to your mates as well. But this is filled with good quality content. I've learned heaps, I've loved it, I hope you do too. Cheers guys. Cool, so welcome guys, welcome to the panel. Really appreciate you having all year long. Also we got Joel. Joel basically recruited and trained me, but he's a huge champion of mental health as well as I was coming through the ranks. So Joel, super stoked to have you here, man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
How would you like to be introduced? What would you like to bring to the podcast today?
I'm Joel. I'm an ex-firefighter.
Yep.
I spent time about 8.5 years as a career firefighter, and was a volunteer as well. And I was a trainer at the National Training Centre for my last couple of years. As that, and was really pushing the mental health side of things when I was at the training right at that start of people's firefighting journeys.
Yeah, definitely. I remember that, and like a lot of the stuff that you brought to Training Centre has stuck with me, and it's been a cool. Huge motivator for me as well. Yep. So I'm looking forward to talking more about that and reflecting on what you brought then. And then we got Matt from St John, the Ambos, shift manager, right?
Yeah, so I'm recently in the last 12 months I watched operations manager, so
cool.
Looking more after kind of our crews as opposed to necessarily being on a truck itself. So I've kind of gone from started about 6 years ago, volunteering, then coming through paid casual, part-time, and then full-time EMT, and then kind of jump ship a little bit into that realm of management, I suppose you could call it. But
good stuff.
Change.
That's really cool. I love the way you just framed that then as well, with like it being, yes, it's management, but you opened with like supporting your staff and stuff, and that's your role. So sort of serving the front line.
Yeah, well, I suppose our guys need someone to help or have help with them to be able to do their jobs properly, and that's kind of where I see myself fit in there, is more being able to be part of doing something to help, not necessarily me provide support to patients, but be able to have my support to the crew so that they can do their jobs more effectively. So
good stuff. That's awesome. And then Geordie, great to have you here. Travelled over from Hamilton, man. So thanks for making the big trip. But senior firefighter over there and massive champion of mental health yourself as well.
I'm Geordie. I've been in the job just 7.5 years. Again, volunteer before that. I guess probably for me, just getting across some of the conversations that you have or that you find happening across the table as a firey, or some of the complications of just being a bloke and socially fitting into the scenes over there, and what works and what doesn't. So I think it's really good what you're doing, and thanks for having us on.
Cheers, that's awesome. Yeah, I'd like to launch into that, because we've exchanged a couple messages before coming in today, and you mentioned that part of your story, part of what you'd like to bring is that fitting in the mould, I suppose, of what this job looks like. Let's. Do you mind launching into that?
No,
let's go.
Cool. No, I mean, I guess probably. I guess the old, firefighters in general, probably back in the day, the mould would be a lot more of, blokes, don't have to say much, you know, they're your blokey blokes. And these days we've got so many different types of firefighters, from young to old, and then you've got a lot of women in the job now. You know, they're all sorts, and often what I find is, depending on what crews you're in, will also depend on how confident you feel or how confident you act in the job. And yeah, I mean, I think bringing the conversation to the table is important for me as somebody who has struggled with different diversities and different dynamics in crews, that when we go to a job, all of us have one thing in common, and that's to help the people that are in their lowest of moments. So we've all got that in common, but often on the fire ground or even on station, we sometimes find ourselves pulling each other down, and that tall poppy syndrome. And I just think it's really important to raise that awareness and what subliminally that might have effects on your co-workers, and how they, not just how they show up, but also how they have their confidence in the job themselves, and how they, you know, show up that way. So
yeah, that's really, it's a big part of Kiwi culture, isn't it? The tall poppy thing. I imagine it's something we've all come across in our career. Matt, is that in St John at all?
I guess it depends on how you look at it. Maybe not in a similar way as maybe you guys see it as much in Fens. For us, like, I've always set my goal in changing roles a little bit in regards to wanting to make sure that the way that my staff kind of approach the job is, if I can build an environment where I'm happy to come to work and we provide a supportive environment where people actually enjoy coming to work, that we just improve culture straight away by doing that. And so, you know, regardless of all the little bits that go into that, in a grand scheme of things, being able to say, number one goal is have an environment where people actually enjoy coming to work, regardless of what it is that you do. And then you've already improved culture without even having to really do a whole lot of stuff. Yeah, there's still a lot of little dynamics that you have to try and iron out, but I guess it's how you want to approach it, and then whether it's, you know, a single person cause or whether there's actually a bigger problem that you need to address.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point about, like, as far as culture goes, right? It does start with those small things of, are people happy to rock up to work? That sets the foundation of so much, right? How have you guys seen that play out in your respective stations and fields?
Again, probably for me, it does depend on, you know, on each personality. You know, you can't, it's not a realistic expectation to come into work and to expect to be happy and for everybody to mould themselves to what you want. It is life at the end of the day, and there's going to be different hierarchies. There's going to be people who are stronger than in some areas than others. That's just life, and a lot of it, I think, is also how you internalise things, because I'm a bit like that. I'm quite a creative mind. I internalise a lot, and then on the other side, a lot of it is also culture. You know, where I guess I've been in stations before where, you know, I'll turn up and I'm just not so excited because if I make a mistake, for example, it may, you know, that there's people sort of cracking up and quietly, you know, and you're like, oh, shit, you know, and you find yourself making more mistakes. Also been on other crews where, you know, you make a mistake, you get in a pat on the back, it's all good, bro. You know, when I look at things like you watch professional rugby league players or professional All Blacks, for example, they have this funny culture where somebody does a big mistake and they almost get up and they're like, yeah, and everyone's patting them on the back. It's like, what's that about? You know? But I think that they do that because what you know, it's a reminder. Hey, it's a mistake. That's not who you are. And you know, get back, try it again, because you know why you're here. You're good. I feel that with a lot more of that encouragement instead of the, oh, you know, did you see that? I think it would bring out a lot better in the firefighters, which ultimately brings out a lot better results in the community.
Definitely,
definitely, like like you say, like with the crews, it can be really dependent on who you had on your crew, I think. Especially when I started 2013, like it was definitely that old boys mentality and the macho man, which I also don't fit into that mould, as you can look at me, but I'm not big and tough, but it's definitely, like, I was fortunate that I was with a really amazing first crew and an amazing first boss who really fostered a culture of acceptance of mistakes, but also celebrating the wins as well. But then, as you move through the job, you go to different crews, and it's not necessarily like that because of the way the hierarchy is, or the unfortunately, it was how long the officer had been an officer or been in the job, and those older ones definitely still held on to those old ways, I guess. And by the time I'd left, I think a lot of that had changed, but there's still going to be pockets depending where you go. So it's about finding those good crews, good relationships, and really holding on to them, I think.
And as Geordie said, right, that's people. Like, as long as you're in a workplace with people, you're going to have people that rub you up the wrong way, or, like, you know, even as to what you were saying with, you know, the culture of, you know, getting a bit of a ribbing for making a mistake versus a pat on the back. Some people, it's different strokes for different folks, right? Like, some people will charge off the ribbing. Some people will get knocked down a peg, and with what you started with, Geordie, I really liked how you mentioned that, you know, the job's changing as far as diversity goes. You know, we're getting a broad range of people, and I think every workplace looks like that. It's getting more and more diverse workplace, and that brings its advantages, right? Like, it brings more support for those who might need it. Would you say you've seen that work out in your workplaces?
Yeah, like, even from an ambulance perspective, I think ever since I've started to, you know, in the last 6 years, healthcare studies have changed so much that it's allowed a lot more people to go straight into university, say from college, which has then meant that we've got a lot more younger people coming through our service as well, or starting in our service straight out of university. And it's been quite nice and refreshing as well to have a lot more younger people. And I say that, it sounds like I'm old, but I'm not. You know, a lot of people coming through as their first career choice, being in a frontline service rather than coming in, you know, later down the line maybe. We still have that, but it brings, like, this really nice fresh perspective into the service from how I see things as well, I guess, where you guys are right, where, you know, maybe 10, 15 years ago you have this old boys club situation where now it's just naturally changed, where we have so many newer, fresher people coming through that they bring all these new great ideas, and with that we're just almost forced to change the culture that comes with it. So it's quite nice, I think.
On that, Joel, do you reckon you could bring, like, because Matt's right, there's an influx. I felt even when I was going through the recruitment process, maybe it was the tail end of it, where a lot of people were like, no, you need a trade before joining some of these jobs. Whereas I feel like it's becoming more of a thing of the past. There's a lot more people coming in at a younger age, like myself, with less experience from abroad. For those people, do you reckon you could tap into a little bit of what you used to do on the recruits courses, and just sort of give a broad overview of what mental health looks like, what some of the challenges are, and sort of speak to those new recruits, perhaps?
Yeah. I used to. I've gone through my own mental health journey, and I always found on the courses, I was always share at the end, like, to just be honest and open about that, and to share that. And I just started, look, it's a journey, and we're on it. We're all in different stages of it, but it's the biggest thing I wanted to get across is it's okay to not be okay, and depending on how that looks. And I really felt that at the time it was still a little bit taboo to be talked about mental health around the mess table or something like that, especially while the older generations were still quite quiet on it. But there was a big push to see that, and because how I saw the job is what you saw day in, day out was not normal. And so if what we're seeing is not normal, then we shouldn't expect to have a normal response to that. And over my time, I went to something like 400 or 500 cardiac arrests, which is a phenomenal number for anyone. But I go home and talk to my wife, and she's never seen a deceased person, which for her that's a normal thing, and probably a lot of her friends and family are like that. And so then to be on the other side of that, because we want to help, because we're there, we have to just realise that to the wider world what we see and what we do is not normal, and then whatever response comes from that is an okay response. Whether some people were good at shrugging it off and maybe making some black humour jokes about it, or a lot of others would internalise it, take some time to think. And so I really pushed through those courses that, hey, you got to check on people, and it doesn't matter. Being quite a hierarchical service, it didn't matter where you sat in that, and often it's really important to also check on your bosses as well as check on your fellow firefighters. And I really tried to do that when I was on the trucks, because when you ride a truck with three firefighters, one boss, the three firefighters, really easy to have that chat. But because of that hierarchy, often the boss would just go back to their office by themselves and not have that chat, or not have that person that they could chat to. So I found that really important. You try to really push that, just asking, are you okay, what's going on, and just trying to realise that it's not normal, kind of the stuff you're seeing day in. It might feel normal because that's the 20th call you've been to in the last 2 weeks, but it's actually not normal for the majority of the population.
That's really good.
Especially younger, like you were saying, how you're having a lot of younger people coming through. That there's probably, for some, there's a bit of a view that this is the job. Come on, sort of harden up in a way. But ultimately, that there's a lot of benefits to them being young. That which is why they were hired. But you got to nurture those people. I think you got to look after them, like you said. Ask them, how you going, and look after them just the same way that we'd look after any old Joe Bloggs that we've never met before.
I think even for me, like, interesting you say, going home to your partner and talking through things like that. I think for me it's almost the opposite, where I've kept so much away from my home life, from work, around like I swear my parents don't even know what I do, and that's absolutely fine by me. Not knowing the things that we put ourselves through solely from a perspective, it's then for me it was always, I don't want them to have to stress about things that knowing that I have to go and do every day. It's almost like just don't tell them, and then it's easier. And then I feel like how many other people in our service then are in the same position, where they hide so much maybe from people outside of work that makes them in a position where it does make things more difficult. We're quite lucky in an ambulance perspective, where say on a job, and I speak from like a metro area, I appreciate that rural sometimes a little bit different, but where say we've got a job that we go to that involves myself as a manager, or I just want to go for whatever reason, and we've got our critical care paramedics that go in the utes. So there's almost like these two levels of management, with inverted commas, that you've got like a clinical leadership, which is our critical care people, and then you've got me from maybe a perspective of support for the crew and whatever they need. And it's been nice, I've found, on my watch specifically, where say after a job, we're actually, for me to be able to have a little bit of a debrief, or forcing myself to have a bit of a debrief with the critical care paramedic, because it's kind of like that perspective of, they might not have been involved as much in the job, and they've had that nice oversight of something that they can then pick up a few things as well without realising that I might have missed a few things, or missed that the crew have maybe done something or seen something, or have had some involvement that I've just completely missed. And actually being able to bounce off someone in our own crew for the same reason, to be able to go, well, it's kind of both of our jobs to then look after the team that sit with us and work with us, and we're all on scene to do the same job, and then kind of go, well, how do we, as a smaller team and a bigger team, make sure that we're all keeping each other's backs? Even if you have different roles and different ranks, being able to say, well, we're all, like you said earlier, we're all here to do the same job. We're all here to provide support or care to a patient. But then being able to step back from that and go, how can we ensure that by doing that, we're also caring for each other in the team in all those little ways, so that when everyone comes back from the jobs, as you say, they've got that person that they can talk to, that they know that isn't going to judge them. They might have made a mistake, or they might not necessarily have made a mistake, but they might have just done something that wasn't their best performance on the day. It wasn't their best this or that, and they want to just be able to talk to someone and feel like they've been heard and say, hey, look, I did a terrible job there. I think, I was half asleep, or I wasn't in my best mindset, and whatever it was, I could have done better. And being able to have that person that then will sit there and listen to them and go, okay, perfect. So how do we make sure it doesn't happen again? Or, how do we make sure that this person's looked after next time? And by doing that, I feel better in myself to know that we're actually able to put a little bit more care into our team, to know that they would feel at the end of a job maybe they've had a little bit more support, that if they need to talk to someone, they know they can.
I think it's also important to remember that through training and through the way that jobs are structured, there is the inbuilt resilience, and so it's not necessarily going to be the job you've just been to that's going to be a trigger for you, and it might not be a super traumatic event may not be the trigger for you, but it could also be the volume of the build-up, and your volume is going to be different to my volume too. So not necessarily, I found it was not necessarily always important to check in after every single job and feel like I was becoming that nuisance to someone, but you can see a gradual change in someone, or especially if it's super traumatic, then of course we're going to be having those chats, but by the fourth or fifth one in the week, then maybe we're going to go a little bit deeper as well. But we do have, through the reason training is structured the way it is to build the skills to deal with that. And so it's being mindful that it's not going to be every job that's going to have an effect, but it could just be a volume thing too.
Yeah, true. I was just speaking before, I was just thinking, when you were talking about checking in and see if people are okay, I think from my perspective, like a lot of people, I use dark humour. I've got a list of, they've all got funny names. There's something funny about that call, that traumatic call, that reminds me of the call, and it's just my way of thinking. That's right, skinned cat or something like that. It's got nothing to do with the cat. One thing that I've noticed is when I'm not heading back to the station after the call and taking the mickey out of it, I notice something sort of resonating a little bit with me that it's not normally when I'm not just laughing, and that's when I'm like, oh, that was really upsetting. And it's usually more the dealing with the families who are, you're watching their emotions, and like you said, whether it be a number of accumulative, or whether it just be one particular one that for some reason hits me personally. So I guess to what you're saying is it's also a good way to notice about your colleagues, if they're somebody that normally laughs after, or if they're doing something different in their behaviour, is a good way of, maybe I do need to check. You're all good. I just noticed you're a little bit different today, or after that call, and I
like it. It's really good. I really it's what you were saying, Joel. I really like that inbuilt resilience piece, as far as we have been trained for this. We are an environment that is, at least intended to be supportive for this kind of thing. And that's something that Joe brought up on here recently, a few weeks ago now, I suppose. He said a lot of people talk about, how challenging it is, and that's really important to talk about. But he also said not many of us talk about the strength that comes from being exposed to things in this job. Like, it does make you stronger, right? Like working any other muscle, the more you work it, the stronger you can become. I think that's quite a cool perspective, very, very different, because I suppose it just sort of leans into a bit of the resilience, the bouncing forward that can be done. Is that something you would say you could have seen in your careers or spaces so far?
Yeah, I guess it's probably, I say it's different, it's not different. It's, when you do the same thing 101 times, sure, you could say it's, you get used to it, but I feel like in our industries that no job's ever the same, or no call out, or no, whoever we attend for whatever reason, it's never for the same reason, or it's never exactly the same dynamics every single time. And by, your training only provides you a certain amount of coverage for everything we do, and then I suppose you learn from every experience every time of those little things that we could do better, or the little things that have caused a problem with someone later down the track, and we go, okay, well, we need to avoid that, or we need to do this better, or we need to change how we do this. I think by learning from those things, for me, is how you get a little bit more of a smooth operation where you don't keep making the same mistakes every single time.
Yeah. And also, and probably in the same breath, like this podcast situation here is in my view a result of bouncing forward, because a lot of I guess bouncing right back would be internalising things, issues that are happening around the table, not dealing with them, and I don't want to raise that. For me personally, like you, Joel, and like many, I've had my own mental health issues, and one of those, my ways of dealing with that was isolating. Came off social media for a long time. Was sort of afraid to be out in the public, or even just small things like group chats. If I say something and then people just ignore me, things like that, just really silly stuff. But the only way to learn from those moments is to actually get yourself out in the open and talk about it. And as a result, we're here, I guess. That's a really good thing. Normalising the conversations, and it's really not that taboo. It's just life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I don't know if I've actually mentioned it yet. You run your own sort of YouTube channel and Instagram at the moment, where you are promoting those sorts of conversations and just living out loud a little bit, just to encourage others.
I would call it more living out loud than running of anything. But yeah, it's the same thing. Like, I was off social media for quite a while, and then and a lot of my interest, whether it be music, just putting jokes up, or having a bit of fun on Instagram, I pulled away from that, and it's a way of self-protection, I guess, for a whole bunch of different reasons. But so I was like, no, I'm going to get out there again. So I started this thing, and it's not very big, but it's more a chance to be able to talk about things like this, which I think is always good, and it's going to help other people. And since starting it, I've had people come to me and say, because I've got ADHD, and that's something that it's an amazing thing to have, but it can also be a real Achilles heel, and I've had guys come up, I think I might be ADHD, and it's just good to be able to chat about it. It just normalises it. So it's not really running stuff, it's more just chucking some videos up and a little taking the piss out of myself a little bit. But I'm
good on you, man. That's awesome, because as you say, it starts the conversation, right? That's what this is all about, is getting people talking about it, getting people aware that you don't, that isolation, battling that isolation, whatever you can do to not get yourself in an isolated position. It's awesome.
I think anything that starts a conversation, even if it's with one person, is better than what we used to have, and what we've seen in the past. And even now, like the guys from the job that I keep in touch with, it's yeah, hey, how you going? But it's how are you going? You know, like how is your mental health? Same as how's your physical health? You've been out running, you've been doing whatever. Yeah, I think it's getting rid of that taboo and being way more normalised through, like the podcast, through what you're doing as well. And if we can get one person off the ledge, it's better than what else we've had in the past, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's also people realising that it's not just one person's job to solve the problem as well, that because, you know, and say the crew that we have on at one time, we might have, you know, 20 to 30 staff across a region. I don't know all of them personally, but each of them, I'm sure, know one or two or three quite well. And then it's realising for them to go, oh, it's actually my job as well to make sure that those one or two or three people that I get along really well with, to be that person as well, to make sure that we're each looking out for each other rather than relying on someone else to do it for them.
That's right.
It's a really cool point. I'd like to sort of go into a little bit more of what the ambulance scene looks like for you guys, because I guess for us, we're a crew of 4. We stick together as a crew of 4, hours and hours on end. So we go to a potentially traumatic event or whatever, and it's easy enough to keep really close obs on each other, to really know, you know, when something's different, it stands out for us because we are in a very close environment. Ambulance, I don't know, from the outside doesn't really look like it can work that way, because sometimes you're riding one up, right? You're just on your own for a whole shift. So the keeping obs on each other, how does that look in St John?
Yeah, I guess there's no like a cookie cutter method to how the ambulance runs across the country. You can't say, you know, everyone always works with the same person and there's always the same amount of people in the station. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. But you know, from my unqualified opinion, for where we are here locally, we're quite lucky to work the same watches. So similar to how you guys work in terms of watch base, we have the same kind of thing where, you know, you get a chance to get to know your local team really, really well. I appreciate that doesn't really work in some areas where maybe the stations are quite far apart, in some rural areas or some non-metro or urban areas where, you know, maybe it's an hour before you get to the next station, or in a station you might only have 1 or 2 ambulances, which means either 2 or 4 crew or potentially, you know, 1 or 3 or however many staff. So, you know, the numbers there changes quite dramatically, say to here, where on a day we might have 8 ambulances working out of one station, which is, you know, potentially 16, 17 staff. So there's quite a benefit in the numbers, but there's also quite a benefit in the lesser numbers as well, I guess, where into like here in Western Bay, say like Te Puke, where they've got 1 ambulance that works day and night. So you've always only ever got 2 staff members there. They would get to know each other relatively well, which is either a blessing or a curse, where if they don't get along, oh, God help them. But
they deal with it all.
Yeah. But then, say here locally in Tauranga, where we've got the more ambulances and more staff, where you get a little bit more change of dynamics, where you can work with people and rotate around a little bit more, which, I don't know, in these kind of discussions, I guess, it can go one of 2 ways. I guess it's worse because it doesn't get you a chance to really catch up with someone. If, so, you know, maybe the week before they were having a bad week, then the next week you might not work with them, versus, you know, maybe it does give you a chance to talk to more people more frequently. And I suppose, if, you know, from my role, not being specifically in an ambulance every day working with one person, it's nice to be able to get a bit more of an oversight across all of the staff and all of the ambulances, and kind of be able to, hopefully, if I'm doing my job right, be able to figure out where the problems are and where people are that maybe I need to go and catch up with and see a bit more frequently. We're quite lucky, I suppose. So for, say, one singular job that happens, they're not going to send all 8 ambulances, well, okay, maybe, but they're not necessarily going to send all 8 ambulances to the same place. For, let's say, for a cardiac arrest, you know, you might get an ambulance and a ute, which is 3 staff maybe. So we're almost sheltering staff from consistently going to the same thing, unlike maybe you guys, where if you've got 1 fire truck that goes to every single cardiac arrest in the area, we potentially might only have, say, one ambulance and a crew, and it might not be the same ambulance every time. So maybe the stress is spread out a little bit more. So I suppose different perspectives on things, but
Yeah,
it's all logistics.
that's cool. So, like, you reckon well, I guess we're talking about your situation. I understand, respect you can't talk about the whole nation, how they work, but in your environment, you feel like you can keep close tabs on each other. Your culture.
Here, yes.
Yeah.
Like I say, other people from other areas might have different opinions. We're lucky here that in our district, so we go from Te Puke all the way through to Katikati, so we've got 4 stations, all within relative, distance of each other, that we're quite lucky that would usually always run into each other. And we've only got 1 hospital, so, everyone always goes typically to the same place, so you're always going to run into people, and kind of have that little bit of a crossover where we're definitely doing paperwork, but we're definitely also having a bit of a catch up at the same time, that kind of thing. And I'm like, it's fine, yes, KPIs, great, you can scrub that out, but at the same time, it's also, we're ticking off a little bit of a, if you look at it from a management perspective, everyone's going, oh, well, you're just wasting time. But we're like, well, actually, it's giving people a chance to actually catch up on, not on your home life and what the rugby was, but maybe it's also giving people a chance to be like, oh, you went on holiday last month, I haven't seen you since then, how was your holiday? But it's little stuff like that it keeps us connected to each other, and I quite, I like it, because it means that next time that we go to that job and they're working together, it's not like they're strangers that they haven't seen for the last 6 months. It's, they know each other, and they need to be able to work they need to be able to work together well. So that's kind of, by being able to have that nice, close community here, we're lucky. So, like I say, it doesn't necessarily work the same everywhere else, but I'm happy with where we have here. So.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds great, man. It sounds like your role is actually really interesting, and you're perfectly suited for it. So
it's what you make of it, right? So as it's all roles, right?
Yeah, and I guess that's what you were saying before. Is it's everyone's responsibility, right?
Yeah,
it's not
definitely.
It's not just all on shift managers' shoulders. It's on all our shoulders to check in on all the ranks.
Yeah, I think because from the outside it looks like there's a bigger risk in the isolation within St John. Same with the police. If they're only one up, they go to a job and then they go to the next one. Whereas Ben's is in a fortunate position that, hey, there's going to be 4 firefighters, 3 firefighters and the officer on the truck that go to the call together and come home from the call together. So, there probably is that risk. So if you can foster an environment where they can get together and they can have those catch-ups, then hopefully it's going to be beneficial down the track.
And that casual catch-up that you do while you're on the computers doing your paperwork, that's where that foundation is laid, right? Like, that's where you don't rock up with a stranger and do paperwork and be like, oh, I just really struggled with this thing. That just, it doesn't happen. You only do that with people that you have rapport with. So
it's not also saying that in that specific moment people are going to pour their heart out and say, I'm having a really bad day. I mean, yeah, they might, but at the same time, it then allows potentially someone else to pick up on the fact that, they haven't come and said hello today. It's not like them. It's kind of giving people a chance to, we're really, I say we're really good at, we're probably not, to be fair, but I think we're really good at kind of noticing trends and changing the trends in our own colleagues. And by doing that, it gives people a chance to be like, oh, well, I haven't seen them. They're just sitting in the front of the truck scrolling TikTok for, the whole time. That's not like them. Usually they'd come out and, be giving us shit for something, whatever it is. It's that part of it that I think is helpful to be able to pick up, and you can't necessarily do that in your rural areas or maybe areas where you've got less staff to have things bounced off, or you can't have a manager in every single area at any single time. Or even a CCP or another paramedic that can have that oversight. It can't happen, obviously. So I appreciate that. We are lucky in these bigger areas where we're more spread out and maybe not got 4 people on a truck. There are times where it gives us the opportunity to have that to bounce off.
That's good. Geordie, you bring a lot, like as you said. You've had quite a journey with mental health of your own, and you bring a lot of passion and interest. I don't want to ask any too pointed questions in case it's like prying into stuff that's just not our business. But I'd really like just to provide an opportunity, bit of space. Is there anything you really want to bring forward today?
Well, yeah, I guess the main thing that I really wanted to focus on was, basically in the job, and I sometimes find that if the culture, especially as a fiery in a lot of places, could change to, instead of being like pointing, but come on, let's all do this together. That for me is the main incentive. In terms of my own personal life, so I'm 40 years old now. I had, when I was in my early 20s, got married, went through divorce, kids, issues with that personally, going through the courts and things, and where I'm at right now, I'm remarried. I'm very, very, very happy. Just actually been on a honeymoon, thankfully.
Congrats.
But I think to look at it as a whole, I think if I look back and look at what I did going through those periods of mental health and struggles with mental health, is one thing that I did was, I've always liked drinking piss with my mates. That's one area that I noticed when things went bad for me. I was sort of using that in a way, like it would kind of numb a lot of the pain that I was feeling, and in a way it got quite destructive for me. So I gave that the boot. For me, that has been a huge change in my life. Just it kind of opens you up to be more vulnerable in a way, because you're raw. You don't have anything to fall back on. But yeah, just for myself, I think there's a huge variant in the way that people use things or habits to try and cope with really tough things in life. One of them, isolation. Another one might be alcohol. For some people, it might be drugs, or it might be whatever. I think for me, the most important thing was probably taking a look at myself and recognizing what are the things that are actually causing me damage. What are the things that are related to each issue of real grief that I've had in my life, and how can I tackle that? If I can put my head on the pillow at night and know that I've done everything right by myself in terms of health, in terms of also knowing that I'm being fair and kind to other people around me, then I can tackle life and the crap that life brings sometimes, feeling good about myself. So yeah, that's probably another one, is just because we're firefighters or ambulance, and when we're in these jobs where we're sort of seen as these fit and healthy people, it's not uncommon for people to have normal everyday struggles like alcoholism, drug addiction, mental health, depression, ADHD, all these things. They're pretty normal things, and they can be dealt with pretty easily as well. There was I remember when I was on station quite a few years ago, I think it was Paddy Gowan, came out with a show on TV, and it was about him experiencing and coming to the realisation that he has got an issue with alcohol. And the next day we came into the station, and the amount of people that were just talking about it, man, I think I drink a bit too much, or there's a lot of people out there that, it would be a bit embarrassing to say that, because, and I just think that's a really important comment. We're all weirdly unique in our own different ways, and nothing is abnormal. We've all got the same goal, and I think for being in this kind of, as a first responder, and you really do get kicks out of really helping people that are in need. You've all got the same goal, and it's a serious goal. But to do that, you've got to look after yourself first. and you've got to look after your crews and your friends around you, and yeah. So
like that's the second time it's mentioned. Both you and Joel have mentioned that like nothing's abnormal because what we're doing isn't normal. So it almost normalises everything in a way. To what you were saying, I think, as you mentioned, it's super common in New Zealand, right? The numbing behaviours, like I don't know. I haven't researched it. I don't know the numbers, but you look around and you feel like it's almost epidemic levels of people numbing and doing damage to themselves. In your phrasing, your journey, you've gone from there. You've gone from a very common place in New Zealand with the family struggles, the family courts, or all that very challenging series of events in your life, to being able to talk about it. You seem to be, and I should probably ask how you are today.
Yeah, I'm good, man.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, really good.
That's an amazing story, right? Any advice for people in that trench right now? Family troubles at home, numbing behaviours that they don't want to confront, they don't, or don't even notice that are there to confront. Is there a path that you could, or a few steps that you've taken that you could highlight that would help someone in that trench right now?
Yeah, well, I guess what I don't want to do is come across as someone who is out the other side of struggles, just in general, as a general term, and everything is all happy now, because I think ultimately life is, and half of life can be a struggle at times. It depends on what it's going to throw you. So, my mechanism of coping, as I said before, one of them is actually, taking the piss out of quite traumatic calls, whether that's good or bad. I think probably my advice to anybody would be, it's really important to check in on yourself and start to have a look. If I'm dealing with something that's abnormal, like first responders do, how am I going to, what do I do to get through, what's my normal behaviour to get through those moments? And is that normal behaviour healthy for me? But also on the other side, as a first responder, we spend half of our life at home. So what's going on at home that I'm struggling with at the moment? How am I responding to that? And looking at that behaviour, and is that healthy for me? Is that causing any rippling effects? That's probably all I could say, is just checking in on what your own behaviours are and taking a hard look at them. If they're making things worse, then there's plenty of people out there who have gone through divorces and who have gone through everything that we've just said, and there's plenty of first responders that have gone through real strong mental health issues due to trauma, and there's also plenty of people out there who can you can talk to, and who, I get where you're coming from. So recognising the behaviours in yourself and then reaching out to others who will be able to understand. That's probably
So that question then to ask yourself, if I understand, I would phrase that question as, what are my habits in these moments, and are they helpful? Is that a good way of phrasing it?
I think so. It has worked for me hugely, particularly over the past 3 to 5 years, and it's something that I need to keep doing, because life isn't going to always be great. Things are going to come along, and new habits will probably start in different areas, and just keeping a track on them. And like you said before as well, Joel, exercise is, am I exercising? Am I running? Why have I been struggling this week or next week? I seem to be internalising things a lot more than I normally do. I haven't been for a run in a couple of weeks. Am I eating well, and all those sort of things.
And if I could just scratch one layer deeper, and if we don't want to go there, that's fine. We can just edit it out. It's not a problem. But, from that position, you phrased it as, you were going through a divorce, courts and troubles at home and the numbing behaviours. Is there any warnings for someone heading into that position? On reflection, could you think of any warnings as far as prevention for that situation? If not, we can just move on.
As prevention, well, I mean, I think in my situation at that time, things were pretty crazy, but I couldn't escape the crazy. There's nothing that I could have possibly done to escape that. But what I did do to try and escape it was, say, drinking more. And that was a behaviour that I could control. I couldn't control, you can't control life sometimes, people pass away or what things are going to come your way that are going to be really, you're going to have to face up to them. So yeah, maybe I've a little bit forgotten about the question.
No, that's okay. I think you've pretty well answered it. But as far as prevention goes, taking control of what you can control.
Yeah, I think so. That's all you can do, really. If there's noticing something that I'm doing that's making my bad situation even worse, and taking control of that, you can't really do anything else, I think.
It sort of lends itself into that. I've heard a phrase recently. Is it something like radical responsibility? It's a good one as far as, even if the situation is as far out of your control as possible, find something that you can control and take responsibility for it and change that. And I mean, that whole concept of radical responsibility, I think that's how they were wording it. Obviously goes into a lot more stuff, but that's
I agree. That's
golden advice, Geordie. Yeah, thank you for sharing, man. And Joel, if you had the mic for 10 minutes, but you've got an amazing story to get and a lot to give. I'd like to give you a bit of space just to let loose with what you're comfortable.
Yeah, I'm been pretty open, I think, because I think there's value in not necessarily. There's value in sharing, because once you share, then 3 or 4 other people go, oh yeah, that's the same, and it's probably super scary to share at the start, and it was for me, but once you open up that door, like, those conversations are phenomenal. My mental health journey probably goes back to 2017, when it really hit rock bottom, and there was a number of contributing factors. The job was definitely one of them, and just the build up of what I was seeing and what I was being exposed to, and not dealing with that very well. I used alcohol as quite a numbing agent to assist with that, and I remember it quite vividly. Like, it was one evening, wicked lightning storm blowing over home, and for whatever reason, that was me done. I was in tears and couldn't verbalise what was going on, but like, I was just at rock bottom, and fortunate enough to have a very supportive wife, who hadn't been experiencing the mental health herself, but she's like, we're going to get it sorted, whatever it is, I'll take you to the doctor, and we'll start a process. And I'd been to doctor before, and I'd been to psychologists and talked to them before, but nothing really prepared me, I guess, for hitting, at that time, was my rock bottom. And had some really good mates that I said, can we just hang out? And we'd sit side by side. I found that was way better than sitting face to face and having those initial chats, and just talk, and just opening up about kind of the things that I'd seen, and there's a couple of jobs that really stick out, that really are quite triggering in terms of the patient was someone that looked similar to someone I knew, and that was a trigger. It looked similar to my boss's kid, and I had a whole bunch of other things going on. Very vividly, I remember the tree at the end of the corner that I was going to line up, and that was going to be put to the floor, give it a crack. And for whatever reason, I didn't, which was, that's amazing too. But when you're in the trenches, when I was deep in there, I couldn't see a way out, and I didn't know how far I was gone until I started to crawl out. And so, got some help, got on some medication, which has been really good at levelling my emotions and my thoughts. And I've tried to come off it a few times because it in itself is quite numbing. So I don't experience the high highs, but I don't experience the low lows. And so I'll often, I've had the question, what do you get excited about? And I find I don't get excited about, or, we've got a family holiday booked up and the kids are absolutely peaking for it. They can't wait. And I'm just like, yeah, it's cool, but I'm not wrapped around excitement. Whereas in the past I might have been, because of I feel because of the medication, I keep quite level, but I don't get the high, but I also don't get the lows. And so I'll take that as a win, because I don't want the lows. And so at that time, when I was really, really bad, I knew I had to make a change, and one of those changes was to get off the trucks. Fortunate enough that I could take a role at the training centre. I've got a teaching background, so that definitely helped. And I went back up, and I was doing really well again. Because I wasn't exposed to that trauma, for me, it was just good to be a bit fresher. And then sharing my story at that time to the courses was somewhat healing, I think, to be able to share some of what's going on. But then in 2021, I started going backwards and not realising, in hindsight, I could see, I was definitely going backwards in my mental health. And, I've heard it said before, guys on station said it, but, it's not about the dishwasher. For me, it's not about packing the car. It does not matter how you pack the car to go away on holiday, but, that was a big trigger for me. And that was, just a big crumbling moment. And through that time, through early stages of 2021, we had a baby on the way. I lost 3 grandparents in the space of 8 weeks, and I was using alcohol as a massive coping mechanism. And my personality is that I'm all or nothing. And so if I'm all in, I'm all in. So I'll work hard, and smashing out some big hours, some big days. But as soon as that was done, I'm all in. To the alcohol, and to the partying, and going out, and that led to some poor decision making, which put me in a vulnerable position. And through a series of events and some accusations that were made against my behaviour, I went down a big deep spiral again, and that was a tough one, because I'd made some poor decisions and going out and drinking and drinking with some people, and put myself in a position for the accusations to be made, and I was completely cleared of all that, which in itself is great, and I had some really good mates and people with me that backed me up throughout the whole process. But it was like a big wake up call for me and my mental health, and for where I was and who I was as a husband first and foremost, and who I was as a father. I had two boys that were, they're probably 5 and 3, and then a brand new baby, and set in motion again going and speaking to someone professionally. But I was speaking to a few boys at the time that really helped. Some of my really close mates, their support for me through a pretty rough time is kind of what held it together for me. But going back to all or nothing, I was like, right, I need to get rid of these bad habits. So knocked alcohol on the head, knocked all social media on the head, because for me that was not making it better. The comparisons, the thief of joy, through social media, I was all on that. Using the alcohol, I just couldn't. If I had one, it wasn't going to be one, because I'm just all in boots and all. So I went through that second. I kind of see it as two sort of big lows through my mental health. Coming through that process led me to leave the job, because I knew I couldn't go back to the environment where I was at the training centre because of how everything had gone down. But I knew if I went back to the trucks that I would go back down another path, and I didn't want to be that person. It was tough. It was a pretty grueling 6 months of trying to be sober. If you have any habits, it takes a good chunk to break them, especially when they make you feel good. The mates that I had at the time and the people that I could, my wife was phenomenal through it. Some really good mates through the job and also outside the job. Just really helped pull me back up from there and to the position where I am now, where it's still got my mental health challenges, but it's a process, like you're saying. I don't have it all together, and I don't know if I ever will have it all together, but at least being able to share it, hopefully it just triggers some other thoughts and chats for people, I think.
Good on you, man.
Man, that's an incredible story. I like it.
Someone who doesn't do social media as well and being on a podcast. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I reckon we absolutely should just take a moment. Just Joel and Geordie, what you've both just done, and like massive vulnerability shown to support and encourage others. So I'm kind of blown away by what you've just shared. It's incredibly humbling, and you're just, the demonstration of vulnerability and bravery of what it takes to do what you guys have done, as far as crawling out of those trenches and sharing. Just massively appreciate it. So I don't feel like there's much more to say than good on you, humbling, that's for sure.
It's the cool thing is that really it's not that hard, eh? To be where you are, it's almost like it's not. It's like being a fiery and going to these jobs, and the media might say, "Oh, the heroes and all that." Really, not heroes. It's just we're just people who are wanting to do the right thing, and it makes you feel better as well, I think full credit to you, but it's really not that hard. It doesn't. That's the cool thing about it. More people can do it if they put their mind to it. And there's a lot of people out there who are scared to do it, but it's really not that big a leap.
It doesn't have to be, to get out of the trenches doesn't have to be a big drastic move. either. You don't have to go all or nothing like me, you know, like that's just my personality. I know that's how I work, so that's how I have to deal with things. But even just having a chat with a mate over a barbie, or some of the best chats I've ever had with friends is when we're going for a run. And that might not be the best run in the world because, you know, conversational pace is pretty slow. But yeah, I can think back to times where we've just gone for a run around the streets and, you know, just chatted about anything and everything and not solved anything, but just by sharing, you know, you're just getting it out there, and somebody else, they're just bounce an idea off, and yeah, doesn't have to be a big step all the time.
Yeah. I want to acknowledge though, like, I appreciate that, you know, it's not a big step, but I also want to acknowledge the bravery it's obviously taken you, Joel, like, to make those big calls and to pick your priorities. Like, firefighting is an identity, like, I think any frontline service is an identity thing, right? Like, it's so much purpose, it's so much camaraderie, there are so many things about it that I guess could almost be that addictive stuff. But for you to go through and make those big decisions of, this isn't good for me, and you listed your priorities there of wife and kids, and those two things are the top priorities. Anything that doesn't make you better for that has to go. That's big, bold, brave decisions, man. And yeah, again, just humbled to hear that story and consider that you've gone through and chosen the things of your identity that aren't helping build who you want to be, you know, like, awesome stuff. I don't really know what else to say to it, to be honest, except thank you for thank you for, I know your family, beautiful family, man. Like, your kids are just awesome. There are very few families in this world that Hannah and I talk about as far as, like, you know, young families that we model our family after, because our kids are significantly younger than yours, but your family is one of those. So on behalf of your family, thank you. You know, like, you mentioned the tree and stuff, and that's huge that you didn't. You chose your family first, and now we get to be part of your family's life too. So just those ripple effects, you know. I think it's an awesome illustration of what you've done. Your identity is you've chosen those, and the ripple effects of that decision is significant, to put it as an understatement. So I don't really know where to go from there. I want to respect our time. We've been yarning for over an hour now, so I feel like, I'm sorry if I led that down a bit of a doom and gloom path, but I feel like that was really worthwhile. Probably not as many laughs as you might have been hoping for, but I really appreciate it. I can't overstate how much I've valued our time together.